Hello and welcome to Conscious TV. My name is Iain McNay, and today we have another program in our series about the stories of yoga teachers, how they became yoga teachers, how they enjoy being yoga teachers, and how it's changing their life. So welcome David Sai, our guest today. And David, it seems from reading your biography that you actually started yoga because you weren't well.
Yeah, I was sick. I had called ulcerated colitis. I had tumours in my lower gut, compounded by spastic colon, so the gut would go into a spasm every time I had stress. And I would pass out and blood would leave my body, and I had really no life at all. And I investigated everything I could in terms of the medical profession, and their final prognosis was that I would have to have an intestinal bypass. And I was looking at life with the idea of a colostomy bag. And
And you were only in your early 20s then.
Yeah.
That's a horrendous thought.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what to do, and I heard about these yogis who had trained, and their training was Tibetan, and they trained in Tibet, and they said that they could put together, they believed that the body was a barometer of the way we feel and think. And at that time, my studies were social anthropology, and I just thought it was bunkum and such a lot of hokey. But I was in so much pain. I thought, well, okay, I'll give anything a try, and so I went to see them. To cut a very long story short, they put me through a series of therapies, Tibetan therapies, along with Tibetan yoga. And after I used to go there for 2 or 3 hours every week. After the 8th or 9th visit, I was feeling extraordinary. I was having no attacks. I was feeling happy, and I had energy, and and when you're in pain, being in pain, and anybody who's watching this who's been through pain syndromes in their lives or is still in that, life is a living death. It's dreadful, and when you come out of pain, it's quite something. It's like heaven on earth, and I was over the moon. I was so enamored with my own energy. And I then remember going back to the hospital, the St. Mark's Hospital. They've closed now, going towards Old Street. And they gave me a complete body scan, and all the men in white coats came in, and they said, "What have you done?" And I said, "What do you mean?" They said, "Well, we've looked at your body. There's no tumours. It's completely clean." So I then told them what had happened to me.
And what did you do at those sessions, or what was done to you?
Basically, they tapped into the organ. The organ was the colon, and what they said at the beginning, which blew my scientific mind, was, we're going to tap into the memory, that the organ absorbs negative memories, and everybody comes from a different organ in their bodies. Some people come from their gut, some people come from their heart, and it depends on the type of person you are, and your karmic propensity and all of that. And I listened to it, and it just sounded like so much psychobabble. And I was like, right. But then when they actually went into the organ, they signaled the organ by techniques of holding the body in certain points, like acupressure points.
Acupressure, okay.
Yeah, so it's the meridians.
Yes.
And they used sound to signal the organ. So there was a sound chant. I went into spasms. I mean, the gut went into spasms. And by the third time, I was begging them to stop. And they said, well, we're just going to hold the points. You will see whatever comes up out of the organ as a memory. And it really was like the opening sequence of Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, it was the most extraordinary editing of all the stuff that I had suppressed, pushed down in my life, because, I was brought up to get on with my life and not to dwell upon all the pain and stuff. But it clearly does go somewhere, and that's what I understood from the therapy. Be that as it may, whether that is so or not, and my scientific mind was juggling with it, I started to feel very well. I felt very good.
So in fact, they were doing something to you and you were just lying there. You weren't doing anything active as such.
I was participating in the fact that emotion was being released.
Okay.
And
you were cooperating.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they said that they would facilitate it. And then we went through, pranayama, breathing, what we call rebirthing, Tibetan rebirth.
So just for people who don't know, what's pranayama breathing?
Pranayama, it's just different techniques of breathing that will affect the body in different ways. The causality of breathing creates a different circumstance in the body. So you can be very specific about the sort of cause or the effect you want by the way you cause the breath to be. You notice that when you're, for instance, anybody who's angry or frustrated has very shallow breath. And if you're satisfied, you go, wow, isn't that a great day? You'd actually take a breath. Your body's naturally doing it. And when you actually start manipulating those techniques, you can create different circumstances within the body.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's what happened. And so they found my body was completely clean. And they said, well, they said, well, what did you do? So I explained, like I'm explaining to you, what I explained to the doctors. And they said, well, we don't understand that. And I said, well, clearly that's your problem. I'm out of here. Yeah. And I left. I then went on to study, qualified. But 25 years ago, you would starve alive teaching yoga. So I did everything else.
So you qualified as a yoga teacher?
Yes.
But from what you described, they weren't really doing yoga as such. They were doing energy work. Isn't that different?
They did energy work, absolutely. That was initially what they did, and we went then into Tibetan yoga as well. That was.
And what's Tibetan yoga?
It's a form of yoga means union. Coming to yourself is a series of exercises that bring you back into that union, that harmony, that balances the body, what we call the body temple. So the endocrine system, the nervous system is balanced, the mind is balanced and feels in accord with the body. And in those moments we have union, and the result of that is joy, health, and all the other goodies that you can get through recreational drugs, but it's much better this way, and it's legal. So,
absolutely.
And that's how I teach very toxic individuals, particularly young people who are in gangs and who are, up to their eyes in crack cocaine and all the rest of that.
Right.
How do you resolve that? You have to resolve it by the fact that yogis for thousands of years were getting high. That's why it survived. It would never survived if it was just down to health. I mean, how long do you think aerobics going to last?
Just keeping we come on to what you're doing now. Keeping your story in sequence. So, you did the training and you became a yoga instructor or whatever. Sure. And you were saying it was quite hard in those days to get people interested. Is that right?
Yeah, it was a very hippy-dippy thing to do. I mean, there was no, gyms weren't entertaining it. It wasn't something that, it was the area of, the lunatic fringe. That's what I was part of. Yeah. So, I did everything else to earn a crust, running restaurants, management companies. I've driven lorries, done everything, really. And it culminated for me being offered a job to run a radio station in Belgrade in 1990. I was running Manor Restaurant, which is one of the...
Manor Restaurant. I used to go around the corner from there.
That's right.
Funny.
Yeah. Huh. I ran it from 87 to 1990.
Well, I must have been one of your customers. I went in there a lot. I remember there was a waitress called Beryl Marsden who was a singer.
Right. That's
I got quite friendly with. Yeah,
right, exactly. Yeah, I know Beryl.
Funny.
Yeah, so it's a very small world.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right.